Next up, I'd like to invite Tali and Alex from Product Madness to talk about from prototype to Stardom, early stage UA tactics for new game prototypes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this talk. From prototype to Stardom and tips on early UA. First slide is a reminder for me to tell you who we are. My name is Tali Tzukerman. I'm a senior product director at Product Madness, and with me today is Alex Ruban. He's our head of growth strategy. Just a few numbers really about Product Madness in case you've not heard the name. We're the #1 publisher in social casino, overall top 25 publisher. We've been around for quite a few years, and we've got 6 very successful games and 7 hubs globally. Now, before we actually start talking about the topic for today, I was wondering if we can know a bit about you folks here. So just with a kind of a quick show of hands, anyone working on developing new games here? Yeah, good, great. People who worked directly in UA? Yeah, okay, excellent crowd. So I think, I do hope that you'll find today's discussion very, very useful. First up, and I think we kind of all know that every journey starts with a single step. And I think for many of us, when we think about new games, as game developers, we have this incredible vision of what's it going to be like, and we can see it, in 2 years' time. We can see all the way from prototype to Stardom. But the reality is that it's not really this illuminated path that you see here. You don't see all the steps that are going to take you to the journey. In reality, you want to be mindful of what you see around you whenever you take a step. You want to take a look and see what competitors are doing. You want to listen to players and how they respond. So it's really kind of not as simple as a path straight from prototype to Stardom. And for us at Product Madness, that's kind of what drives our approach. I'm not going to go into this in a lot of detail because I want Alex to explain most of the details today. But just broadly speaking, we look at four steps when we think about developing new games. We start from a concept, obviously, and then we develop it pretty quickly into a prototype. Now, it's not quickly because we've got the best developers ever, although that helps. It's really quickly because it's super focused. And it's focused on testing a specific concept and whether or not it resonates with our players, which leads me to step 2 here. That's the thing we want to do as fast as possible is to validate whether or not this concept fits with the audience. Do they like it? Do they enjoy it? Are they going to go back? If it's a yes, if we validated it, we would then move into step 3, we'd start iterating, developing something to build it up a bit more, test it again, get some feedback, go back over and over again, until we are ready for step 4, that big launch towards global launch and the UA. As you may understand from this track and overall title, step 2 is the one we want to talk about today, and UA in this early stages of prototype development, which is where Alex come in.
Thank you, Tali. Hi, everyone. So, I actually expected to see quite less developers today and more UA managers, but well, it is what it is. So building UA for new games prototypes at early stage is kind of a tricky thing, but it is essential if you would like your game to be successful. And every smart thing starts with data analysis. So collect information about the market that you are going for. analyze the genre you're going for. If it's a strategy, figure out what are your main competitors on the market, figure out their share of downloads, share of revenue on the market, figure out who is the main ones. And this will enable you to build the comprehensive benchmarks that you will request from your UA channel managers. So ask them to provide you the information about CPI, CPM, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So as much as you collect is better. Then, when you have the list, when you know everyone, sit together with your product team and figure out who is your target audience for your game. So for who this game was built for. It is essential to understand because this will enable you to come up with an interesting creative strategy later. So you have a list of competitors, you know how to spot the creatives they're running at the network, analyze that, figure out if there is any important market trends that worth utilizing at this stage. And it's time to come up with your first early stage creatives. And there are a few simple but important tips to do that. So at the early stage, it's likely your focus will be on the engagement, right? In that case, make your creatives focused on the gameplay, make it more fun. Also, keep it as simple as possible. There is no need to go with misleading creatives because it likely hurt your engagement later on. It's not the focus at this stage. And there is no need to invest in CGI. So keep it simple. Pick 2, 3, 4, 5 maximum concepts. You won't be able to test everything at this stage. And remember, you always need to validate your results for statistical significance. And just to illustrate this point, I've taken one example. It's not from the just recently launched game. It's a slightly different one. I love it. It's Survivor.io. It's quite illustrates the point. I know. Will it go? Nope. Oh, thank you for turning the sound off. So it's pretty much simple. It is gameplay focused. It illustrates the core loop. It is slightly fun. It is also, let's do it again. Anyway, it's fun indeed. So it kind of gives you an understanding what you're going to do in this game. There is no information that will kind of steer your focus away. And when we're coming towards actionable insights from the first early stage campaigns, there are a couple of things that you can test even before you have a live build. So initially, it's good to polish your store page, maybe test it. You don't need the live build for that. You just use the tools like Splitmetrics or many others on the market. And sometimes your developers might have a question. Which direction I need to choose? Should I build more colorful game? Should I build it more dark? Should it be more characters or something else? And these things you can also test with your creatives even before you launch the game live. And this first information will also bring you towards the first indications for marketability. So when you analyze your results, campaign results, you can test, hey, this audience reacted better, this creative performed better, and always compare with the benchmarks. So when it comes to the live test, it could be day one retention, it could be even day zero, like tutorial completion, some engagements. In that case, well, you can compare your benchmarks with your results, and then you'll figure out what direction would be better for a game. Is your game need some improvement, or maybe there is a lack of something in visuals, in creative conversions, or maybe there is no market fit at all. To illustrate that, there are two examples of games in slightly similar genres. And it is so obvious to see when you have the benchmarks, when you have the results. You might have to say, okay, in game one, everything pretty much works good. But here is a trick. You also need to add one broad audience for your creatives. That will be like a health check if your game is more popular or more niche. So in the game number 1, all assumptions proven. Again, it's early stage thing. There is a potential for marketability. CPI is below benchmark, IPM is high, the game is new, original, it's all good. With the game number 2, everything is completely opposite. So everything is below the benchmark. Core audience is not looking really good. And this game requires some improvement. So to sum it up, don't be afraid to invest in early market tests. It might save you more money. Do the proper research, do the benchmarks, understand the market size, understand everything, and work closely with your game development team. Feedback them information about your test, try to direct them where needed, and don't spread your focus over too many things. Just pick the most important ones and test it first. Over to you, Tali.
And that's kind of what we wanted to share with you before we open the stage for questions. There's just one thing I wanted to kind of have you come out of this talk with, and that's this image or sentence. And really the conclusion for us as we've been working on these new games is to use UA in that early stage to keep us honest. And again, if we come back to how we started this, as game developers, we're all super passionate about what we do, about this vision that we've created. But ultimately, we are in the business of making games for players. And with this early phase testing, we make sure that we do it in the way that's right for them. And that's how we get onto that path from prototype to Stardom. I'm going to open the floor for questions right now, but first of all, thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. That was super interesting. I guess one question I have is, if you have a dedicated UA team and many people working on it, you can test a lot of things. But if you're a small studio or have like one person working on UA only, what are the most important things to test first, like top 3?
Do you want to do that?
The most important things here would be like the engagement. This is what you really need to test first. And you kind of need to understand if users are attracted to your game. So just test the first tutorial completion, maybe some levels, just build some content for about a couple of hours. That might give you the first indications. Like, are people interested in that or not? So you will have a funnel with the events, so you can see that step by step how users are completing each event in the funnel.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm wondering, with launching games, do you still think it's wise to have specific geos that you're testing in, first of all, that are cheaper to get installs in? Because I'm starting to see there's quite a lot of fatigue in those geos where they're so used to seeing unfinished games or underdeveloped games.
A good question. This is the exact part when you do the market analysis at the first place. You need to figure out your top markets. Maybe in your genre, maybe the most revenue is just within the 2-3 countries. Maybe not. So it will be easier for you to focus on the core markets first and test your game there.
Hi. Especially for small, early studios, how do you suggest finding the benchmark data, especially CPIs, et cetera?
Well, you're going to test with a user acquisition channel. It's likely to be Meta or something else at this stage. Work with their manager. Ask to provide some support. If you are so small, if you don't have a dedicated team, use your network. Gathering benchmarks, it's not the rocket science. It's quite easy. You just need to have a connection to one of the managers from the UA channel.
I have a follow-up question on benchmarks. So basically you have gathered benchmarks, it's not rocket science, but then you have to convince the product team that these benchmarks make sense, especially when the game doesn't meet them. So basically they have invested their heart and soul in building the game and suddenly it's not as strong as they hoped. So how do you work with that?
It's a very, very good question. What I would say is that that last slide I put up there with a mirror, that's for the product folks, right? So it's for us to be very conscious that we need to listen to the market. So ignoring benchmarks doesn't help everyone. Benchmarks are there to help us. They're there to guide the decisions to the next step instead of blindly going a concept that was in someone's mind. Now, if you provide benchmarks that I, as a product person, believe, as in they've come from a reputable source, they've come from Meta, they've come from Sensor Tower, whatever it is, that's it. That's the benchmark, which is our common goal. It's not just your goal. It's not your goal. It's the game's goal. So that's the point. That's how I would approach it.
Just wanted to add one thing. If it's not enough for your product team, man, I'm really sorry for you.
Hi, over here. When you're testing your new prototypes and using geos for user acquisition, how are you approaching trying to show the game to players who aren't existing players that might think your game sucks because it's a new prototype that's not ready or it's broken or it has bugs? How do you go about trying to use these users that maybe aren't already existing players and find users that can give you that data you need to iterate fast and make mistakes fast without damaging the core player base or your potential high-income geos, high-earning geos?
Could you please repeat it a little bit louder?
Yeah, of course. The question I'm specifically asking is, when you're trying to test or prototype your new gameplay or features and using your user acquisition by targeting different users in different geographic areas or segments, what is your strategy for trying to get data from players that aren't existing players who might see this new feature or prototype, think it's bad, and leave the game, being a negative impact on retention? What is your strategy for going and getting players you can use to test if the new feature is any good or the new game is any good without impacting potential future players? And is that even a strategy at all for you? And if so, what geos do you approach? There's a lot of debate in the industry about what geos to use to try to find out if your game is any good, if you want to pay a low price for that acquisition. What's your kind of strategy and thoughts on that?
Okay, good question. So at the early stage, when you just have the prototype, your audience that needs to be acquired to test different things are relatively small. So we're talking about few thousand of users just to prove day one retention. The total audience in the country is like millions of players, right? So you're likely not going to harm your future players when testing the first prototypes. So the test is it's test for the purpose. You test on a relatively small sample size, but should be statistically significant to validate the results. And then, when you for example, you can, if you are warning about ratings of your game, right? So people will just give you 1 or 2 stars. You don't need to. You can throw away this app and just build a new one. Just upload the new one as the new app on your Play Developer account, so your ratings will be erased. One more thing?
No, I'm saying this is an actual trick. So if you do need at that early stage, you can always swap out and move to a different store. But just be mindful, you can't be choosy about your players, but they're not unlikely to impact the game in its full launch months away.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tali and Alex.
Thank you.